Hello and welcome to another edition of Empathy at the Table. I'm joined today by Elena Girardo. Elena comes from a company I'm sure you've all heard of, a company called Tetra Pak. And Elena has been working for years in the talent development department. So I'd like to introduce Elena. And Elena, why don't you just share with us a little bit about what it is that you do at Tetra Pak and the impact that you're making in the company?
So, hello to everybody, and I'm Elena Girardo, and in Tetra Pak I have global responsibility for talent and diversity, equity, and inclusion. I focus on talent development, performance management, accelerating the development of our leaders and talent, employee engagement, and also everything which is connected to DEI. So making our environment more inclusive, be sure that we enjoy working with diversity, and also that we provide equitable opportunities to all our employees. This is what I do in the organization.
Excellent, thank you. And so you've been in pharma, electronics manufacturing. Now you're in packaging, and it seems that you stayed within the same function of dealing with people. What is it that attracts you to this specific area of work?
Well, this is really what I love of HR. Dealing with the people, helping them grow, helping them boost their career, finding development opportunities for everybody. This is really what I really love to do. And this makes me passionate. This is what I love. This is what tells me why I'm happy to go to work every day.
So imagine a 17, 18-year-old who's just finished university and they're kind of considering what to do, and they come across this word or this job title, talent development. How could you explain to a 17, 18-year-old exactly what that role entails and what they might come across?
Yeah, we are getting into something which has been a very difficult question I always got from my daughter, saying, "Mama, what do you do?" And I've never been able to answer her. Now she's 14 and she's starting to understand it. But when she was younger, I was saying, why I cannot explain what I do to a 10-year-old girl? But then just trying to be more, to find some words to explain what I do. This is really helping people understand when they are in their role, understand where they want to go, what is the best for them. Because one thing that for me it's really important is that you do a job that you like, and not to be trapped in a job that you're not happy for. So understanding what you really like, what are your skills, what passionate you, it's something which is very important. So my job is really to work with people, understand what are their skills, what are their talents, and find them, what is the best path, what is the best career in the organization. So this is one thing that I can say what I do and what really make me passionate about my job.
So does this mean that people end up working in jobs in companies and they really have no idea why they've ended up there? And so your job is to help them kind of figure out, well, how did you land here? What it is that you wanted, and then how we can kind of plot a path for you moving forward.
I think it very much depends. There are people who, it also depends very much on what you love. There are people who really love a lot to work on very technical stuff, and they would never be satisfied if they have to move to something where it's the less technical aspect on their work, if they need to manage other people. So it really very much depends on what you like. And whether people ends up where people ends up in job, well, I think that very much depends on the organization, but it very much depends on you as well. When you are in a company, one thing that it's really key is start thinking about career and start thinking about where you want, not necessarily career, but where you want to go and what you like doing, and having those type of discussions. So it's not saying people end up somewhere they don't like, or people need to wait. one thing which is really important is be proactive. Think about what you like, where you want to go. Make yourself also noticed, because just waiting for things to happen will not work. But I think that making things happen is what is my job, but helping also people understand where they want to go so that they can raise their hand, they can promote themselves when there is an opportunity. It's also very important.
Yeah, that's a really, really key point. The make yourself noticed. I don't know. I think maybe in the older days, you just came in, you worked for a company, you put your head down, and you just got things done. And maybe you got promoted, maybe you didn't, but you kind of, there was this almost sense of luck that I've got a job and I'll probably stick with this company for the rest of my life. I remember having a conversation with you, and you were saying to me that the talent nowadays, they're extremely conscious about the choices they make when it comes to the companies that they're working for. And they ask you questions like, what are you doing for sustainability? Those kind of things. They really want to know these areas that you offer as a company. So would you say that for an individual coming into the company, I'm not talking about somebody who's there already, but for an individual coming into the company, would you say it's worth them investing time into kind of building what their personal brand is, right, as they're coming into the company? Would you advise people to look into that?
Well, for sure, personal brand is important at any stage, and personal brand can include a lot of things. Can include how to present yourself, how you're able to talk about your strength, how you tell stories about what you have done so far. But I would say it's not all important when you get into a company. It's important anyway. And probably even more in a company, it's important also to build your brand. I think that one key point in a company is not overselling, because humility is always something that we look for, but at the same time, not downgrading what you have done. But if you have done something, if you have done good result, share it, talk about it. And so that's when I think about personal branding is important, both for newcomers, but important also for people inside the company. And personal branding is what I said, but it's also having the right network, connecting to the right people. That's also another thing which is very important when you talk about personal branding.
Yeah, it's a really wide area there. I mean, what advice do you give to people who are maybe natural introverts, for example, and they're not really used to going out and bragging or talking about what they do, but they still have that necessity to be able to, brand themselves and let people know what's going on? How do you work with these type of characters?
Well, I have to say there are multiple ways in which you can have network. There are the ones who are most extrovert and they just have more social connection. But when you are more introvert, there are a lot of areas. So eventually you can define to have regular meeting with people, or you can just connect via email. Also, posting on social media is a way to make people know you without being necessarily going into something which is not so comfortable for you, which is the social interaction. You can just connect via social media. So there are multiple ways now, especially with all what we have, which is not just face-to-face meeting, but you can interact with people in various ways, and then can probably go a bit beyond being an introvert.
What's your preferred mode of interacting with people?
It depends. It depends, because it depends whether, when there is a need to discuss on something which is complex, obviously, sometimes you end up in never-ending email, and at a certain point, let's pick up the phone and let's talk. Yeah. It's much easier. Sometimes when it's just sending out information, email or Teams communication could be a good one. Or when it is just something very fast, just send a Teams message and you get the answer. It very much depends. It depends from the topic. It depends on the sensitivity of the topic. It depends on the complexity, or you want a very fast response, and you can have multiple ways to interact. So I don't really have a favorite one. I have It depends. My answer is it depends.
And can you kind of share with us if there are any differences you've worked, as I said, in pharma, electronics manufacturing, and now packaging. Are there any nuances, any differences between the way they approach how they interact with their teams, their people, or would you say it's industry specific, or maybe even more nuanced in terms of company specific?
I would probably say it's not. From my experience, I worked in 3 different companies: pharma, and then packaging, and then electrical. I don't think it's industry specific. It's very much company specific. It depends very much on the company culture. And so sometimes there are companies where it is more top down, and where then the decision is made at a higher level, and then, it's just distributed below. There are other companies when it is more consensus driven, and then there is more brainstorming, discussion at team level, and collecting the input of everybody before getting an idea. So it's really very different depending on the company. There is not a way defined by the industry, but it's more by the company culture.
Mm. So the whole idea of this podcast is what we call empathy at the table, and it's how do we bring more empathy into our conversations, but not in a way where it makes us look supplicative and weak, but empathy simply meaning understanding the other person, or putting effort into understanding where is the other person coming from. And I know when I talk to people, when I engage with people, there are some people that just say, this stuff is just nonsense. It's very very woke. And I hate the word woke, by the way, just in case anybody's listening. I hate the word woke. I just think it's human to human, right? If I'm in a company and I can demonstrate that I genuinely am curious enough to engage with you to find out how you see things, then we begin to build those bridges. I'd like to hear your experience, your insights into you have, is it 20,000 employees in your company?
A bit more, 25.
25,000 employees. So I'd like to hear maybe your experience when it comes to leading with empathy versus leading with, a real hard, old school alpha type of kind of approach.
Well, empathy, it's a very big topic. And but I think that it's something which is really very important in whatever you do. And it doesn't mean that being an empathetic person, you're going to be a soft or a weak person. This is absolutely not. Because sometimes being empathetic, it's really looking at, how the other feel, understanding how the other feel, and trying to get closer to each other. And this could be a very small thing that you have a call for an hour, and there could be just one sentence that you ask, which goes into the empathy, which could make a big difference. And it doesn't mean you need to spend all your time or going into quite topic which could be not so natural for you. Not everybody is an empathetic person, but thinking how I can understand the other, how I can ask some questions so that I can also get the other perspective. And just collecting the other's perspective is a way to be empathetic. So what do you think? How do you feel? These are questions that you can ask that will not bring any harm, even if you are not very comfortable in being an empathetic person, because asking those questions and listening to it can help a lot. So that's why I think that empathy is very important, because can really help a lot. And asking question, getting the other point of view and listening, it's really the first starting point of empathy. And that's not difficult. It's something that everybody can do. Then there are people who are much more towards the empathy side and then can understand that they put themselves in the shoes of others much better than other people. But you don't need to get to those extremes. It's enough to start more questions to get there. So this is where I think that empathy can get. Yeah. And also when you make decision, think about, okay, let's think about the project, what needs to be done, but what could also be the consequences of people. Having this in mind, it's another way of using empathy.
And in a company as yours, how do you begin to create a culture where, I mean, I've worked with you for a few years, so I know the culture of Tetra Pak. I understand it. I feel it. It's not something that you need to have the words written, the values written on the wall. You just feel it when you interact with people. And I'm really keen to understand how do you systematically go about building a culture where people are driven, are ambitious, but they also have a level of humility and empathy for each other.
Well, I think that there is not a magic wand for that, but I think it's a combination of many different things. Because I think that to gain that direction, there are a lot of things which go there. So, for example, we have our performance management system. And it's a system where we assess what people do, but also how they do it. And those things have 50%. So half of your performance assessment is on the goals you reach, and the other half is how. And then part of empathy could be there. We have employee engagement, and we run employee engagement survey to assess what our employees think, what they think the company is doing. And so we get a sense and an understanding there also of what could be done more. We have started a huge work on culture. So we run culture sprint when there are different discussion on various topics. And the next culture sprint is going to be on growth mindset, which is not really the same as empathy, but to be sure that you give someone a growth mindset, you need to drive the person to be empathetic toward them, etc. So, and we have sessions, we have learning session on emotional intelligence. We talk about how you can understand others when we are in the leadership curriculum. There are a lot of things where you can go in that direction. I don't think it's only one way in which you can do it, but various different things that you can do to build that. And then we have also started to run some session on emotional intelligence. And then obviously empathy is a big part of emotional intelligence. We have started with the HR, and it was compulsory for everybody in HR. And now we have expanded it to the rest of the organization. Various things, small things, one after the others, even if are not things which are specifically focusing on empathy, but where empathy could be into play.
Excellent. Fantastic. I'm obviously really interested in emotional intelligence because that's my body of work. And are you able to link the work that you've done with emotional intelligence to output?
That's a good question. One thing I'm told, usually people tell me that I'm good in developing others. And then when I get a very good a message from someone saying, we have really seen this person developing and it was because of you, I think that a part of emotional intelligence has come into play in that work. Because when you help others develop, you're really talking about their strengths, their, also their development needs and when they can improve. And you need emotional intelligence when you talk about this. So this is an example of something that I can bring.
So let's circle back to, again, what it is that you do with talent development. If I explain this to my kids, for example, talent development, they associate this with careers development, right? When you get to university, you get these people coming from different companies, and they talk about career development and plans and so on. As a coach, I know that that's not the case. I know that it's across the board. You have people who are just out of university, but there are people who've been maybe in employment for 20 years, and they also need career development. So can you maybe share some light on that and to the type of people that you work with in terms of the age and the ideas that they have and the stages they are within their careers?
It could be at any level of their careers. And I think that at any level of where you are with your job, with your career, it's important to talk about development. Because, for example, it could be because you want to develop for the next role, and then you need to understand what are the skills that I need. For example, I want to become a people leader. I've never had direct reports, so what is needed in terms of leadership? Could also be because you want to go to the next level and you need to be more strategic. And but sometimes when you talk about career, could also be to get if you want to get to a more higher level, you also need to get a lateral step, because you need only to look at breadth. So you need to be exposed to various parts of the organization. So this is another part. Or it could also be that people are not interested in moving up because they really love what they do. But with all the changes, with all the innovation, with technologies, AI, if we think all the things which are coming now, you cannot stay in your role without development, because there are new things coming. So development can have very different phases. Could be, and I gave some example of things. You can have development in various ways depending on where you want to go.
Yeah.
So it could be with anybody, newcomers, people who are quite experienced in their career, etc. There is not really a specific focus on an area, but you address it in different way depending on where you are.
So it sounds like even if you want to stay exactly where you are, you still need to develop, because everything's moving forward.
And when we have a tagline that we always say, stay relevant. It's a very important. We always say that in Tetra Pak. And to stay relevant, you really need to think what is changing in what I do and how I need to upskill myself to continue to be relevant in my job.
What's most difficult for you, talent acquisition or talent retention?
Well, I'm not in charge of talent acquisition. It's more talent development and talent retention. But I think these are two different things, and they are different at the same time. When it is talent acquisition, you need to go into what you were mentioning before. The person who is coming to Tetra Pak is choosing the company first. And so what we can do to make people, possible candidate, aware of what Tetra Pak is, what are our values, what is our culture, what it is to be here. And so that's one thing. And the other part of talent retention is really what we can do so that the employees continue to be engaged, continue to be willing to stay in Tetra Pak, are willing to promote Tetra Pak with the outside world. Two different things. I would not say one is more difficult than the other, but both of them you really need to work hard to get.
And I mean, without naming any names, Elena, or going into deep specifics, but can you maybe give us an understanding as to what happens when talent development goes wrong? Because it can't always be good, right? There must be some pitfalls that you've experienced.
Well, it depends. Sometimes could happen that obviously, when we promote people, there is one job and could be people who are not happy, and then a talent who is not promoted leaves. And this is when we lose a talent, and this is something that we are not happy about. And it means that, and I think it goes well, not only because the person is not being promoted, because we couldn't find alternative ways to motivate the person so the person continue to stay until we have another opportunity. So that's, for example, one thing where we say it's not going well. Sometimes I would not say promote the wrong person, but sometimes one thing that you need to pay attention is that obviously you want to beat on talent, and sometimes in internal talent, a talent is not ready. But you say, we really think that person can do, and then we need to be sure that we are also working on a safety net and what we can do. So there are these, sometimes could happen that someone get a job and then it's not what is expected, but then you need to think, was the person not as it was expected because we didn't do enough to support the person in the new role? So this is another options. So these are a few things I can share. Or sometimes could be that you don't anticipate enough some specific need of talent that you have, and then you are competing in the outside world to find talents for a talent which is very much on demand, and then you can have struggles in finding them. So it's more on the talent acquisition side, but it's another thing. Ability to anticipate what are the talents needs so that you will not be shrink in terms of the talent you can look at.
And very interesting. And so when you look at the culture of Tetra Pak, it sounds like this is something that it's not set in stone. It's something that's continually evolving, right? You're continually making sure that it remains relevant to the status, well, what's going on around the paradigms within where the company exists. And so you're taking continuous input as well. How do you then how do you get the feedback from your stakeholders, right? So you have people who are out there talking to customers, talking to clients, and getting feedback. How do you maintain, get that level of relevance with what's really going on in the market?
I think it's a combination. It's a combination of what the customer tells to us. It's a combination of input that we get. So, for example, what customer tells to us created a big project a few years ago because we really felt we needed to be one voice to the customer, which was not the perception that we had. Mm-hmm. This is one thing. We also collect input. We have a lot of people coming in and out as a consultant, intern, etc. We also collect input from them. I think it's different ways of looking at it. And it's also one other thing which is also very important for us. It's not only, in addition to collecting the input, which is key, it's also bringing the outside in. Because it's also looking what are the trends, what are the companies doing, etc. Is it something that we do that we can import in the organization and look at? So external trends, etc. It's another thing which is also very important to look at. What's the culture, etc.
But what comes across as I'm talking to you, Elena, is that you actually really care, right? It doesn't feel like this is just a job for you. The fact that you are able to speak about different facets of the company, different facets of the business, it feels like you go above and beyond what perhaps maybe your job role requires, and you genuinely care. Would that be a fair assumption?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's a very
It'd
fair
be
assumption.
hard to say no, right?
It's hard to say no to this answer, but it's truly yes.
Yeah. Well, we are coming to the end of this wonderful conversation, and I'd really like to thank you, and I thank you for two reasons. One, because I know you didn't really want to do this. When I asked you to join me on the podcast, you wanted to be fully prepared. You wanted me to send you the questions. You wanted to know everything, and I politely declined. And even when we jumped on this morning, just before we jumped, you were also very, very nervous about doing this. And so I want to thank you for really doing this, because this is really to help other people. We want to be able to show other people that there are some incredible people doing some incredible things, minding their own business, just doing things. And nobody really gets to know the ins and outs and the motivations of these great people. And you're one of those people, Elena. So I want to thank you very much for that. And I also want to thank you for being open and frank with us on this conversation today. So just to finish off, could you maybe share, if there's any listeners who've heard this and they think, wow, I'd really like to connect with Elena and see, what she's doing and what she's up to. How can they find you? And what is it perhaps that you're working on right now that's really, really driving your passion?
Well, if someone wants to find me, they can find me on LinkedIn. And that's easy. Everybody can reach out to you via LinkedIn. And what I'm working now, I'm working on quite a few things on my plate, but working on developing some program to accelerate the senior leaders in our organization. And we are just we've just closed our employee engagement survey. So I'm really assessing there all the inputs that we get from employees on diversity, equity and inclusion, on career, on development and growth. And with the goal of thinking, do we need to put into place any action? So these are the two big things I'm really working at at the moment.
Thank you very much. You'll find Elena's details in the show notes. Elena Girardo, thank you for joining us on Empathy at the Table. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.